The NATO 2030 initiative, strengthening the alliance for the future. The world is changing at a rapid pace, and so are the global security challenges faced by NATO, the North Atlantic Treaty Organization. Founded in 1949 to safeguard the security and stability of its member countries, NATO has proven resilient over more than 70 years, adapting to new threats as they arise. However, as we look toward the future, the geopolitical landscape is evolving more quickly than ever before. New threats such as cyber warfare, emerging technologies, climate change, and the rise of authoritarianism pose significant challenges that NATO must address if it is to remain a central pillar of global security. To meet these challenges, NATO has launched the NATO 2030 initiative, a comprehensive strategic effort aimed at ensuring the alliance remains capable of defending its members and maintaining global stability in the coming decade. NATO 2030 is not just about responding to traditional military threats but about adapting the alliance to a world where non-conventional dangers, cyber attacks, disinformation, and hybrid warfare are becoming just as threatening as tanks and missiles. In this video, we'll explore what the NATO 2030 initiative is, why it's important, and how it plans to address the most pressing security issues of our time. The origins of NATO 2030. In 2020, NATO Secretary-General Jens Stoltenberg launched the NATO 2030 initiative to ensure that the alliance remains fit for the future. Stoltenberg emphasized the need for NATO to prepare for a world that is more competitive and unpredictable than at any point in recent history. The initiative came in response to growing global instability, technological advancements, and shifting power dynamics. Stoltenberg's call for NATO 2030 came against the backdrop of rising tensions with Russia, increasing influence of China, growing challenges from authoritarian regimes, and the acceleration of emerging technologies. Moreover, NATO was grappling with internal divisions and debates over burden sharing, defense spending, and political unity among its members. The NATO 2030 initiative is intended to address these concerns by strengthening NATO politically, militarily, and strategically. It is designed to ensure that NATO remains strong, cohesive, and adaptable, able to protect its members and continue playing a leading role in international security in the face of evolving threats. Key objectives of the NATO 2030 initiative. The NATO 2030 initiative focuses on several key objectives that are central to the alliance's future success. 1. Strengthening political unity and cohesion. At the heart of NATO 2030 is the need to strengthen political unity among its members. While NATO has proven effective in countering external threats, internal divisions over defense spending, strategic priorities, and foreign policy have raised concerns about the alliance's political cohesion. Countries like the United States, France, and Turkey have had disagreements on how to handle specific crises, such as interventions in the Middle East or the relationship with Russia. To address these challenges, NATO 2030 emphasizes the importance of enhanced political dialogue and consultation among member states. The goal is to foster greater unity in decision-making, ensuring that the alliance remains capable of responding to crises with a unified approach. This requires strengthening NATO's consultative mechanisms, increasing transparency among members, and aligning strategic goals. 2. Enhancing military capabilities. NATO remains, at its core, a military alliance. While political cohesion is vital, the alliance's effectiveness ultimately depends on its military readiness. One of the primary goals of NATO 2030 is to ensure that NATO continues to modernize its forces, develop cutting-edge technologies, and maintain the capability to deter and defend against any potential adversaries. Technological advancements such as artificial intelligence, AI, hypersonic weapons, and cyber warfare are reshaping the future of conflict. To keep pace with these changes, NATO 2030 calls for increased investment in military capabilities that address the evolving nature of warfare. This includes strengthening cyber defenses, enhancing air and missile defense systems, and ensuring that NATO's military forces remain interoperable and capable of operating together in a rapidly changing environment. 3. Addressing emerging threats. The global security landscape has expanded beyond traditional military threats. NATO 2030 recognizes that new forms of conflict, including cyber attacks, disinformation, and hybrid warfare, pose significant challenges to the alliance. These emerging threats are often harder to detect and counter, as they target the political and social fabric of societies rather than their military forces. Cyber attacks, in particular, have become a growing concern for NATO. In 2007, Estonia, a NATO member, was targeted by a massive cyber attack that disrupted government services, banks, and communications. Since then, cyber attacks have become an increasingly frequent tool of state-sponsored aggression, particularly from actors like Russia and China. NATO 2030 aims to strengthen the alliance's cyber defenses by encouraging members to enhance their cybersecurity capabilities, share intelligence, and coordinate responses to cyber threats. Hybrid warfare, which combines conventional military tactics with disinformation, sabotage, and irregular forces, is another growing concern. NATO 2030 places a strong emphasis on countering hybrid threats by improving coordination between member states, enhancing resilience, and promoting the sharing of best practices. 4. Expanding NATO's global partnerships. Another key aspect of the NATO 2030 initiative is the emphasis on expanding and strengthening NATO's partnerships with non-member countries and international organizations. While NATO's core mission remains the defense of its member states, the alliance recognizes that global challenges, such as terrorism, cyber attacks, and the rise of authoritarianism, require global responses. NATO has long worked with partner countries in Europe, Asia, and Africa to address shared security concerns. The NATO 2030 initiative seeks to build on these partnerships by deepening cooperation with the European Union, the United Nations, and regional actors in the Asia-Pacific. The goal is to enhance NATO's ability to respond to crises beyond its borders, while also ensuring that partner countries can benefit from NATO's expertise and resources. One area of growing importance is NATO's relationship with like-minded democracies in the Indo-Pacific region, such as Australia, Japan, and South Korea. With the rise of China and increasing tensions in the South China Sea, NATO sees value in building stronger ties with these countries to maintain stability in the region. 5. Climate change as a security threat. Climate change is not traditionally considered a security issue, but NATO 2030 recognizes that it is increasingly becoming one. As global temperatures rise, climate change is expected to exacerbate resource conflicts, displace populations, and contribute to instability in vulnerable regions. Climate-related security risks include competition for water and energy resources, food insecurity, and increased migration flows, which can strain the capacity of NATO member states to respond to humanitarian and security crises. NATO 2030 highlights the need for the alliance to assess and mitigate the impact of climate change on its military operations. This includes ensuring that military forces are prepared to operate in extreme conditions and that infrastructure is resilient to the effects of climate change. Additionally, NATO will encourage member states to incorporate climate-related security risks into their national defense strategies. 6. Promoting democratic values and defending the rules-based international order. A key pillar of NATO's mission is the promotion of democratic values, individual liberty, and the rule of law. NATO 2030 reinforces this commitment, particularly in the face of growing authoritarianism and challenges to the rules-based international order. Countries like Russia and China are increasingly using tools such as disinformation, cyber attacks, and economic coercion to undermine democratic institutions and promote alternative models of governance. NATO 2030 calls for a renewed focus on defending the rules-based international order and countering authoritarian influence. This includes supporting efforts to combat disinformation, strengthening the resilience of democratic institutions, and promoting the values of freedom and democracy within and beyond NATO's borders. NATO 2030, addressing geopolitical shifts. One of the most significant geopolitical developments that NATO 2030 seeks to address is the rise of China. While NATO was originally established to counter the Soviet Union, the rise of China as a global superpower has fundamentally altered the strategic landscape. China's growing economic, political, and military influence, particularly in Europe and Africa, has raised concerns about its impact on the international order. While NATO does not view China as a direct military threat, NATO 2030 recognizes that China's actions, particularly in areas such as cyber warfare, space, and technological competition, pose challenges to the alliance. The initiative emphasizes the need for NATO to engage more deeply with China, particularly in the areas of cyber defense, emerging technologies, and maritime security. NATO 2030 also stresses the importance of ensuring that NATO members maintain technological superiority over potential adversaries like China. Additionally, NATO 2030 focuses on Russia's continued aggression, particularly following its annexation of Crimea in 2014 and its ongoing involvement in eastern Ukraine. Russia remains one of NATO's most significant security challenges, and the initiative calls for enhanced deterrence and defense measures to counter Russian hybrid warfare tactics, cyber attacks, and disinformation campaigns. NATO's strategic concept and the road to 2030. NATO 2030 will play a key role in shaping the alliance's future strategic concept, a document that outlines NATO's long-term goals and priorities. The strategic concept, expected to be updated as part of the NATO 2030 initiative, will provide a roadmap for how NATO plans to address the changing global security environment and ensure that the alliance remains relevant and effective. The NATO 2030 initiative also emphasizes the importance of resilience and preparedness. Building resilience against non-traditional security threats, such as pandemics, natural disasters, and attacks on critical infrastructure, is a core component of the initiative. NATO must be prepared to respond to crises that threaten societal stability, and the initiative calls for member states to improve their resilience and civil preparedness. Conclusion: the NATO 2030 initiative is a comprehensive effort to ensure that NATO remains capable of defending its members and maintaining global stability in a world that is increasingly complex and unpredictable. By strengthening political unity, enhancing military capabilities, addressing emerging threats, expanding partnerships, and promoting democratic values, NATO 2030 sets the stage for the alliance to continue playing a leading role in international security for years to come. As the world moves toward 2030, NATO's ability to remain adaptable, resilient, and united will be crucial to maintaining peace and security in an increasingly challenging global environment. Thanks so much for watching. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to give it a thumbs up and hit that subscribe button for more awesome content. Also, make sure to turn on notifications by clicking the bell icon so you don't miss any future uploads. Drop a comment below if you have any questions or suggestions for future videos. I'll see you in the next one.